We last left Catwoman at the turning of the modern age, with her whole career up to that point being talked about in Batman comics, but for the most part outside of a couple backup stories, she was just a supporting character, never being able to take the spotlight of her own until nearly 50 years after her introduction. I do have to make the disclaimer that while I will be focusing on her solo comics run from here on out, unless there is a specific crossover or important event that happens elsewhere that really must be brought up. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with her reimagining. When Freaky Frank Miller penned Batman Year 1 in 1987, he retold not only Batman's origin, but also that of Catwoman. It struck such a chord with readers and critics that Catwoman's canon origins were retold with Year 1 as a template. This new origin was published in 1989 as a Catwoman 4-issue miniseries by Mindy Newell, J.J. Birch, and Michael Baer. This origin told of Selina Kyle as a prostitute, who is beaten and raped by her pimp, but still can't leave the life. Getting the number from a guy who can teach her to defend herself, she starts visiting a man named Ted. Between being a hooker with a heart of gold and training to rip someone's heart out, Batman is starting his own war against the scum of Gotham. Selina and her roommate/only friend, Holly Robinson, are there when Batman eludes Gotham PD using bats, giving Selina the idea that if there's a bat, then why not a cat? Dressing up in a cat bondage suit, or a bondage fursuit. I'm not sure terminology for a cat fetish suit made of leather. But anyways, she dons the suit and goes after her pimp. As she is kicking the ever-loving hell out of him, Sister Magdalene sees her. She's not just any sister either, she's Selina's actual sister. Sister Maggie goes to the police with this information, but Stan the pimp couldn't be arrested. And Detective Flannery doesn't believe that this Catwoman is Selina Kyle. So Sister Maggie starts walking the streets alone trying to find Selina, which obviously leads to her being captured, but not yet. First, that night Selina goes to see her in a new cat suit, one less gimpy. After the talk, then Maggie gets captured by Zoot Suit Reagan. I know, it's a horrible name, but look at him. He looks like a melted Ronald Reagan. Selina's on the trail though, interrogating past acquaintances and whatnot. Meanwhile, Batman is on the case to find Sister Maggie too. But even being tailed by the police, that doesn't stop Selina from reaching Stan and her sister and slugging it out with her pimp. Stan throws Sister Maggie from the catwalk they're on, but she grabs the side. Catwoman tries to save her, but Stan knocks Maggie off the ledge. But as soon as she does, Catwoman knocks him off. However, Batman is able to save Sister Maggie while Stan faceplants into the stage below, obviously not making it into any sequels. Maggie tries hounding Selina about Stan's death, but she doesn't stand for it and leaves out a window. Batman helps Sister Maggie to waiting police outside, while Holly is questioned by the cops. Later, Selina goes to the church to check on Maggie. However, as they talk, Holly comes in, battered and beaten thanks to Captain Ethan Strunk of the GCPD. Selina dons her catsuit, and almost as soon as she leaves, Batman talks to Maggie about Holly. Thus, the first round of Bat or Cat starts as he goes to stop Catwoman from killing Captain Strunk. He gets there before she can beat him to death, but then they talk. As she is trying to tell her case, she kisses Batman, then knocks him down with her whip, scratching his bat symbol. The first round went to her, but there will definitely be others. Is all that miniseries in her modern continuity? Well, not quite, but it is the best groundwork to start with. It's this miniseries, plus being one of the main villains in Batman Returns, that in 1993 landed her an ongoing series. The first series itself takes place after nightfall, when Bane breaks that darn bat and takes over the city's underworld. We find Miss Selina Kyle working for Bane, stealing jewels and the like from Gotham. She's living under an assumed identity with Arizona, a decent stand-in for Holly Robinson, and her pimp, in a manner, is Leopold, her go-to for jobs and fencing goods. The first storyline deals with Bane putting a hit out on Selina because he doesn't have anything to truly control her with, well, besides taking cuts from her heists. So what does he do? He uses that big brain of his to sway a hitman sent after him to go after Catwoman. And it works too. Selina's apartment gets blown up, and the news even gets a nice video of Catwoman saving Arizona from the burning apartment. Catwoman tracks the man down to Santa Prisca, getting Bruce Wayne, currently in a wheelchair, to fly her down there. In Santa Prisca, Catwoman learns of Bane's lineage, but even while she's surviving an attempted military coup, John Paul Valley, as Batman, takes out Bane's criminal empire. But the storyline isn't all pointless, since Catwoman gets to emotionally beat Bane by feeding Bane lies about his parentage. Next, Catwoman is asked by a bunch of hippies to save the rainforest, where wildlife is dying because of a neurotoxin. She gets the toxin, but she is also set up by John Paul Batman and the police, assuming she's going to sell it. She gets away, as she often does, but she doesn't have the real toxin. She then uses the bat signal to confront the new bats to try and talk reason into him, using the fact that Bruce trusted him with the mantle to get him to help her stop the release of the real neurotoxin at an eco-conference. Batman breaks in to assist, but Catwoman gets the toxin away safely and replaces it with a simple tear gas before slipping off into the night. John Paul bats shaking his fist as she flies off. Jumping through a bit, we get the first appearance of the villainous Zephyr, who seems to really be quite good at getting angsty boys to do what she wants, though that story ends with one of those boys falling to their death. Then it's a look at a personal grudge when hired goons break in and steal a cybernetic enabling chip thingy meant for prosthetics to be used to make cyborg soldiers. But as she starts working her way up to the head scumbag, John Paul Bats interrupts because one of the men killed his father and he's on a murderous rampage at the moment. However, Bruce Wayne, having healed up for the most part, comes in to stop John Paul from his murderous ways. However, that's also tied into the Night's End event, as well as the next one being a direct aftermath of that event. Ooh, and the one after that is a 0-hour tie-in. Yay, tie-ins! After that onslaught of tie-ins, Chuck Dixon took over as writer from Joe Duffy, which actually added a retractable wrist-mounted grappling hook as well as a whip to her arsenal. But even more so, his first issue in, Catwoman gets caught by the police and is actually offered a job stealing for the feds. Under their forced employ, she steals a prince's crown. The funny part is that makes him want to marry her, for her spirit and gumption. Go figure. The feds come in to break up the wedding, but Catwoman's forceful fiancé actually takes out the strike force that comes to collect her, and she escapes. Where to? She goes to South America to find a Nazi that apparently has been given the same deal as Selina, so she uses him as blackmail to get the bomb out of her, and Dixon basically gets to reset Catwoman's wanted status and overall standing in the DC universe with an aged Nazi. Kudos, actually. Now freelance again, she gets hired to steal a super secret script from the competition of a major studio, which becomes a rescue mission, and by the end she actually has to write the script herself. I should make a joke about how she got paid $1 million for the job to steal the script, so she made the best pay as sole screenwriter even by today's standards. But that's not funny. Bit sad, actually. Anyways, what number are we on? Issue 22 is when Deborah Pomerantz takes over for this 3-part story where Catwoman is pitted against a drug cartel who's gunning for her and the Gotham underworld after she stole their dagger. But Dixon comes back to pen a one-shot story with Catwoman breaking into a millionaire's funhouse before Alan Grant takes up the pen for part 2 of the short Secret of the Universe storyline, where Catwoman deals with Catman who stole the Lucky Shroud off some island, but as she's getting away, Batman chases her and they both plunge into the sewers, into the waiting hordes of Ratcatcher's Rat Army. But they escape and it's kind of a letdown. Next, issue 27 is the Underworld Unleashed tie-in issue. Underworld Unleashed was basically an event where Neron, the devil, offers deals for souls of both heroes and villains, and the fallout of those deals. So in this one, Catwoman is hired by Gorilla Grodd's political rival to steal a valuable jade monkey before he can get it and secure his reign over Gorilla City. As with most Grodd stories, it ends with him being dragged off in chains. After working her first score with a new team and having to deal with the Penguin trying to pilfer their pot, Catwoman 31 is part 4 of the Contagion storyline, running through most Bat Family titles at the time. Long story short, a dangerous plague is unleashed in Gotham City. This particular issue has Catwoman teaming up with Robin, who's Tim Drake at the time, to track down a survivor to try and get a blood sample. However, they have to fend off a veritable army of men trying to kill him, and by the end the survivor does get killed, but Robin takes a blood sample hoping it'll be enough. Then the next issue is part 10, with Catwoman tracking another survivor from Greenland, but when she gets back to Gotham, the people who hired her were all killed, and Batman brings up that a vaccine can't be made from the survivors. But even after being on the side of good, Catwoman goes back to her life of high-end petty theft, with going to Realasia? We'll call it Realasia, to steal something, but instead gets kidnapped by the Collector, who forces her to make some Indiana Jonesian escapade through some Middle Eastern ruins, which leads into the Legacy storyline for the Bat Family. Though really hers is a reactive story, not having her interact with Batman and Robin and Nightwing during her one-shot tie-in, where she just escapes and takes out Hellhound, who's working for the Collector. Then there's also another quickie issue of her stealing from someplace before we get into Year 2. Year 2 was similar to the whole Year 1 thing, but instead of changing the origins, it's more of giving back of, what else, the second year on the job. Year 2 also saw Doug Moench take on the writing helm, and believe me, it shows. So Batman catches Catwoman, who's just called the Cat Burglar, but she escapes police custody and breaks Penguin, Two-Face, and Joker out of custody just to keep Batman busy. Joker and Penguin wander off as Two-Face flips his coin and goes to kill Catwoman. All the while, Bruce is going on and on about how evil shouldn't tempt him like Catwoman does. Mind you, they shared about 2 pages in this thing, and only 3 panels of it were even remotely tempting, and that was her licking his cheek wound. Anyways, Joker does his fun, as he's ought to do, covering up for Catwoman stealing an Egyptian dollhouse from a museum? Well, okay then. So she goes back to her lair. Two-Face and his goons are there to kill her. She takes them out with relative ease before Batman shows up, and yet again they have a air-quote moment, which I suppose works if Bruce has never ever seen a boob before, but I digress. Catwoman and Batman both go to stop Penguin so she can try swaying him again. This doesn't work, and she gets away. This leads back to the present with Commissioner Gordon giving the Catwoman case to a detective, though since the feds wiped her slate clean, he's going off of all of Jim's hard copy case files. Selina has to go back to her old hideout and recover the dollhouse that she stole in year 2, since she apparently forgot it existed. Well, she classes with Detective Moreland McShane, and gets away with the dollhouse, leaving her diary behind though. So while being investigated, a couple of new cat-themed feline fatales pop up to ruin Selina's day. She-Cat, who is really just ripping off Selina's old MO of stealing cat-themed things, and Cyber-Cat, who just seems to have a huge hard-on for wanting to kill Catwoman. Oh wait, no, sorry. She-Cat's actual name is Alley-Cat, and she steals a true first edition of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde from Two-Face. But since his only lead is a woman dressed as a cat, he thinks it's our dear friend Catwoman, which leads into a fight over the book until Two-Face is back in police custody, and She-Cat or Alley-Cat or whatever is out cold. And Selina starts dating McShane for obvious reasons. The obvious reason being, 'cause it's funny. Then Catwoman gets recruited into Spider, an evil organization who wants her to head up basically their theft leg. But as usual, it's just the long way around so that she can steal from them. And after that, Cyber-Cat reappears for her final fight with Selina, who gets her own special power armor just for the occasion. It's a fun way to spend the 50th issue, definitely. Then we get a team-up of Helena Bertinelli, or the Huntress if you want to go with masks, where both of them team up to take out a large drug cartel. But if that's not enough, a serial killer named the Headhunter is killing again after months of being dormant. Of course, the big twist is, dun dun dun, are you ready for this? Moreland McShane's been him the entire time, and finding out that Catwoman is the girl he's been dating completely made him snap. And in a fit of madness and mood swings, he tries to kill her, but ultimately kills himself. After that ride with Moank, Devin K. Grayson takes over writing with number 54, where Catwoman keeps stealing the same diamond over and over, then giving it back so that she can steal it when they've upped the security, and then dealing with the sleazy SOB who ruins lives by being a sleazy 90s businessman. Issues 56 and 57 cover Catwoman's point of view when the biblical earthquake hit Gotham in the event's cataclysm. Catwoman is trapped in a building helping survivors, which hits her hard, so she decides to be part of the anti-looting hero patrol, where she goes to take out some frustration on Poison Ivy. But as soon as Gotham starts recovering, she's back to her burglary game. Though when Scarecrow breaks out of Arkham Asylum, he starts gunning for Catwoman to test his new serum that only affects women. After a fear trip out, Catwoman feels that her fear makes her better, so she shoots up the entire syringe of the stuff. It's around here that we get a lot of Catwoman's backstory. Her mother committed suicide, her father beat her, and yet we find out her greatest fear is not being in control. This entire revelation hardens her, though the next 2 one-shot issues show her softening with going to rob and then protect maybe a bank, and then teaming up with Nemesis, a really good spy when it comes to impersonating her who needs her help. But oh no, the Clown Prince of Crime escapes and decides in his genius insanity he wants to play cat and mouse with Catwoman. But what a twist, Catwoman's the mouse. But all of this is because Joker wants to hurt, air quote, Batman's girlfriend. Cause like when Batgirl was alluded to be Batman's squeeze way back when, the headlines must surely always be right. Someone's been listening to the Vox too much. After that, given that Gotham is on the road to no man's land, with a heavy heart Selina leaves Gotham, eventually winding up in the Big Apple. There, she takes over Randolph Industries using blackmail and ups the profit margin by 600%. Sweet Christmas, it's no wonder she decides while on that buzz to run for mayor. And wouldn't you know it, the fact that she doesn't exist electronically raises some eyebrows from other mayoral candidates, and they try offing her. Then using the trickster to spy on her, to even Catwoman herself saying she'll kill Selina Kyle for him. With her mayoral run hitting a dead end, Catwoman stages Selina Kyle's death and skips on back to Gotham. Though Trickster did have time to move all 50 mil of her money to the Gotham Relief Fund. Oh, that's nice. And so we come to the epic event that left Gotham unincorporated, walled off, and controlled by the big-time villains. Yes, it's Arkham City if the entire city was blocked off, and there was an earthquake that destroyed most of the landscape. But John Ostrander takes over from Grayson on writing for this storyline. Catwoman, on her way back to Gotham, gets asked by Batman to come to Gotham, to steal CDs out of Gotham. You heard me. Well, she gets the discs, but then puts them up on the internet for auction and draws out Maxie Zeus and a couple of others, including Hardcases Inc., the owner of the discs. But the discs do make it back to Batman before Catwoman passes out on a roof, only to wake up in Penguin's home, naked. Don't worry, it's nothing funny, he's just getting her costume washed while they discuss that she needs to steal for him. And what does he want her to steal? Well, to quote him, he wants her to steal enough to be noticeable. So she steals everything. Well, okay, not everything, just power suits with men still in them, and the construction equipment. Also, Penguin can attempt to negotiate with the current mayor, Lex Luthor. Yes, that Lex Luthor. So Catwoman's just a pawn for Penguin's grab at being the head of the entire underworld again. But Catwoman destroys Penguin's base. Her real payback is with Lex, and if you know Lex Luthor, her payback is brilliant. Yes, I'm not going to spoil it here. And after 77 issues, Jim Balent steps down as series penciler for Staz Johnson, and John Ostrander is replaced by Bronwyn Carlton. So, with No Man's Land over and things returning to normal, Selina makes an attempt to steal a crystal spire from a museum, but someone else steals it, though Commissioner Gordon swears to get that darn Catwoman. So reluctantly, Bruce Wayne agrees to let them modify one of his donations to the museum so they could trap her. She gets caught and actually has her day in court, although since no records exist for Selina Kyle, with the whole FBI electronic swipe and No Man's Land destroying GCPD's records, she's tried as Jane Doe and sentenced to life at one of those rehabilitation centers for criminals. Ooh boy, if you enjoy women in prison movies, well, you'll love issue 80. There's the sassy black girl that teaches Selina the ropes. There's an hardcore evil authority, cafeteria fights, shower scenes, all the ingredients to make it into a Cinema Snob episode. He's still relevant, right? But then things get brought down to an emotional level when we explore her abusive childhood, her mother's suicide, and her father drinking himself to death before she ran away and became a pickpocket. This leads into her starting and leading a riot to take over the rehabilitation center. And you know how she actually gets out of this rehabilitation center? A fellow patient that helped Selina talk through her problems in the solitary cell next to hers slits her throat and rushes her outside to an ambulance. There she tases the other passenger and puts on her Harlequin hood. That's right, the other patient is Dr. Harleen Quinzel. For those in the know, her first main Universe DC role was in Batman 570 as part of No Man's Land. But somewhere in that time, she got reprimanded to this facility, and this is definitely the start of the Gotham City Sirens partnership between the two. Really though, Harley is using Catwoman and Jim Gordon's disdain for her to cover up her own fun. But Catwoman comes to her senses, turning on everyone and leaping through a stained glass window, changed and angrier. With this new attitude, she tosses away her kitties, including her actual Catwoman costume, for a corsety thing and a domino mask. While the edgier Selina uses leverage with the mayor to get Gotham to drop his latest investigation into her, though the mayor is personally gunning for Catwoman now. All the while, a gang war between the original children, a gangland group, the police, and a lone gun-toting vigilante breaks out, with Catwoman sort of in the middle. But let's put all this on hold with issue 89 because it's kind of amazing in its own right. It's a one-shot where Harley Quinn is pitching a cartoon about Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and herself to a bunch of producers. It's a great one-shot because it's basically Harley pitching the Gotham Sirens, and it's being twisted so that by the end, Catwoman is a teen from the suburbs with a happy family, with a nuclear physicist father, Harley is a Korean in a wheelchair, and Poison Ivy is actually a guy and the brains of the trio as they solve crime for the CIA. Yeah, it's fun and worth a read all on its own just because of that. So let's get back to the actual story being told. Someone shot Commissioner Gordon. Catwoman number 90 is part 4 of the Officer Down storyline, with the entire Bat family trying to catch Catwoman, thinking that she's the one who shot him, due to all the bad blood between the two of them over the years. However, she has evidence that clears her name. Want even more fun? Well, the next storyline has Catwoman's psyche and Selina Kyle's psyche battling it out. She even has a hostage that she kept thinking was Jim Gordon. But moreover, she totally flips her lid, with the revelation that Maggie, her sister from so long ago, doesn't actually exist. Feeling unlike herself, she breaks into Arkham thinking that Two-Face must be behind this divide, but he points her to the real culprit, the Scarecrow, who put the seeds all the way back when last she screwed over his plans, way back in the late 50s of this series. The finale of this series has Scarecrow captured when he makes a play to strong-arm the mayor, Deathstroke coming to kill Catwoman, plus her trying to finally have a talk to Batman about their relationship, but it all ends with her unconscious in a homeless woman's shopping cart. This final storyline is written by John Francis Moore. That's the end. The series ran from 1993 to 2001, though I did skip the 1 million issue, which was a throwaway one-shot that I'll probably cover in a binging on comics sooner or later. And what do I think? I think the entire series is actually a lot better than I was expecting. While there was some wavering in quality here and there with one-shots scattered throughout and constant sidebars into other storylines, they do flow naturally if you read the crossover stories as a whole, though they did break up the solo storylines throughout the series. Jim Valente is probably my favorite all-time artist on this series, and when you see it, you can see why. His look really keeps a solid flow throughout the series, not to mention he's an icon in his own right for having such a streak on comic books. Writer-wise, I think I'd have to go with Devin Grayson because there's something about the depth that she added to the psychology of Selina Kyle that really gets to me. It's similar to her work on Nightwing, but that's going to be a rant for another day. But we aren't done yet, folks. Next time we venture into her second ongoing series, starting in 2002, which introduced her latest iconic zip-up leather catsuit. Meow! See you next week. And as always, if you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up, a share, and don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget, we also do have a Patreon where you can pick what is the next retrospective we do, as well as some of our other shows like ComicSins and A Comic a Day. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and let us know what you think in the comments below. And as always, stay golden, Inklings.